Is Donald Trump really from another planet? Has anybody heard from George Pataki? Is anyone still alive in Texas? For July 24th, 2015, from the stylish high-tech underground studios of Ribbit Media in still shaken from the quake in Cranston, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For July 24th, 2015, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. The state of Texas, a member of the United States of America and bound by that membership to protect the rights guaranteed by that Constitution for its citizens, has taken it upon itself to decide that the provision of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which declares all persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States, is not applicable if the mother of the child cannot prove she is who she says she is, to the convoluted satisfaction of the Texas Department of State Health Services. The Texas DSHS has determined that the matricula consular, a photo ID issued by the Mexican consulate, is not sufficient identification because, according to Chris Van Duzen, press officer for the DSHS accepts a variety of documents to verify a requestor's identification. Texas does not accept the matricula consular as valid identification because the documents used to obtain the matricula are not verified by the issuing party. Several other states and some federal agencies also do not accept the matricula as a valid form of identification for the same reason. Is it just me, or does this just look like butthurt birther backlash? Show me the birth certificate! Show me the long form! It's a forgery! Naturally, and I doubt this has been considered by the DSHS, this calls into question Ted Cruz's eligibility for the presidency of the United States, being that he is a Canadian-born son of a Cuban immigrant. Oh, and an American mother. Yeah, Texas. What do you do with a drunken squirrel? Well, apparently you get a bunch of your mates together, catch it, and let it out through the bathroom window. Sam Bolter, who runs the Honeybourne Railway Club, arrived at work one morning. He discovered the place had been ransacked. It's not at all clear how the squirrel got in there, but once in, he, or possibly she, managed to knock a bunch of liquor bottles off some shelves, turn on one of the beer taps, spill money all over the place, and find the time to down a couple of pints of Caffrey's. By the time Bolter had arrived, the squirrel was staggering out from behind a box of chips. The squirrel's reign of terror resulted in hundreds of pounds worth of damage. Can you imagine the mess they'd have found if it was a hipster bar and the squirrel had gotten a hold of a Red Bull instead? In other squirrel news, German police have detained a squirrel. The unnamed squirrel allegedly stalked and chased a woman down the street. The identity of the victim has not been released. North Rhine-Westphalia police apprehended the squirrel and gave it honey tea and apple pieces. No word yet on whether the squirrel will be remanded to a CIA black site via extraordinary rendition for further interrogation with a scratch behind the ear and a fuzzy blanket. Those Germans are tough! Ohio Governor John Kasich is running for the GOP nod, so that probably won't matter. His joining the race only increases the size of the field by 6%. He does not represent a statistically significant sample in a population that size. And, of course, with Donald Trump making so much noise, it's doubtful anyone will even notice Kasich is running. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, who, as you may recall, came down on the minority side of Obergefell v. Hodges, the Supreme Court case which finally settled the question of whether same-sex marriage was legal across the USA, has now come out to report that the sky could indeed fall as a consequence of this decision. He said the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, as interpreted by the majority opinion, guaranteed the freedom to define your understanding of the meaning of life. And this is bad? Alito sees this interpretation as particularly dangerous because a future libertarian-leaning court could eliminate the minimum wage, or a socialist-leaning court could say there is a right to an annual income. Given Alito's record, it's pretty clear he'd rather the former outcome rather than the latter. Still, Alito finds all this liberty distressing, saying, "So we are at sea, I think. I don't know what the limits of substantive liberty protection under the 14th Amendment are at this point. Potentially unlimited liberty? Whatever will we do?" Cutting the cord. It ain't just for skinny-jeaned hipsters anymore. Between the dearth of content worth watching, the out-of-control pricing of cable and satellite TV, and the availability of more and often better content streamed by providers like Netflix and Hulu, customers are leaving cable and satellite TV providers in droves, and from a variety of demographics. Low-income people, the elderly, and households with children are all finding existing pay TV services to be a less than advantageous value proposition. With the ubiquity of smartphones, the need for telephone landlines is evaporating, to say nothing of the intrusion of ISP-offered VoIP phone services into the local telephone marketplace, obviating the need for traditional copper-twisted pair loops back to this local CO. As someone who dumped TV and landline phone service over a dozen years ago, I'm not sure what all the fuss is about, but I'm not at all sad I did it. Hey gang, it's time for celebrity birthdays once again. I got my cake hat on. Let's rock! For the 18th, Harriet Nelson, dead. For the 19th, Lizzie Borden, dead. For the 20th, Natalie Wood, dead. For the 21st, Janet Reno. For the 22nd, Rose Kennedy, dead. For the 23rd, Vera Rubin. And for the 24th, Linda Carter. That's celebrity birthdays. I'm Paul Torville, and I'm done! I'm unpleasant. I'm not stupid. Up next, the race for the bottom of the GOP barrel has gone plaid. You won't quit and you won't do your job. I'd say that's grounds for dismissal. And would you trust a teenager in Russia to drive your Jeep for you?
It can be hard to think rationally when a loved one passes away. This can be especially true in the event of untimely death or when religious or cultural traditions demand quick interment of remains. Blue and Flatley Funeral Homes are here to ensure your needs are served in the most efficient and profitable way possible. At Blue and Flatley Funeral Homes, your money is very important to us, and we want to make sure we do everything you can afford to put your mind at ease. Blue and Flatley, profiting from the misery of others since 1883.
Jade Helm 15. With the 2016 presidential election season warming up and the GOP field is now big enough to play a respectable game of kickball, and the participants demonstrating the same playground tactics, bullying, name-calling, lying, boasting, that made these personality types unpleasant when you were a kid, the row between Donald Trump and John McCain, who isn't even running for president, is positively ridiculous. Whether or not McCain is, strictly speaking, a hero is not really the point. That Trump received 4 student draft deferments while John McCain was flying combat missions over Hanoi and getting tortured by his North Vietnamese captors for 5 years, and then has the nerve to belittle McCain's service and the grueling conditions he endured. That is the point. Trump is free to say whatever he likes. And in all honesty, I'm not really a John McCain fan, but if that's the kind of rhetoric that we can expect from Trump, were he just hypothetically to become the president of this fading republic, that might just be the final nail in the coffin. And just to hang a lampshade on the whole affair, former beauty pageant runner-up Sarah Palin suggested that Trump and McCain should make up because they're both heroes. I may be wrong, but doesn't that sound like the same inclusionist pansy attitude she derided back in 2008? And then, just to further compound us lowly earthlings, Trump announced fellow presidential contender Lindsey Graham's phone number. Why? Who the fuck knows? I'd say it's a fair bet that Trump himself doesn't know. Not to be outdone, Chris Christie announced, unprovoked, that he would defund Planned Parenthood if elected president, and Rand Paul cut a copy of the U.S. tax code in half with a chainsaw. What's next? A contorted George Pataki playing Born to be Wild on a violin? Ben Carson solving a Rubik's Cube by way of a Da Vinci surgical robot while jumping on a trampoline? Carly Fiorina reciting Frost while scuba diving with man-eating sharks? I think the time has come to have Johnny Knoxville moderate all the Republican debates, and Paul Verhoeven should replace Reince Priebus as the chairman of the Republican National Committee. For so many reasons. Kim Davis, the county clerk of Rowan County, Kentucky, who decided to stop issuing marriage licenses altogether following the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell v. Hodges, now reports that she prayed and fasted before she decided that she could no longer issue marriage licenses as a good Christian. Now she faces a federal class action lawsuit filed by 2 straight couples and 2 gay couples that she has refused to issue marriage licenses for. In her 27 years in the position, she has never cited religious objections to anything that her job required her to do. But this cannot stand. Mixed fabrics? Meh. Eating shellfish? Can't be concerned. Disobedient children? No time to gather stones. People who love each other? Want to get married? And they're gay? Well, not only will she not issue marriage licenses, she won't resign and get out of the way so someone else can do it. She said that if she resigns, that leaves my deputies to deal with this. If I resign, it solves nothing and helps no one. That's where you're wrong, Miss Davis. Your resignation would solve your how can I do my job when my job is to do something I object to problem, and would help people who want to get married to get married. All you're doing is retarding progress in your tiny little corner of Clorox country. If you want to live in the Middle Ages, go ahead. Have the decency to get out of the way for the rest of us. The death in custody of Sandra Bland is now being investigated as a homicide. With all the increased scrutiny on local police departments, how is it that things like this keep happening? Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts.
Nobody should be watching anybody. The police should be able to act against minorities with impunity, and they oughtn't to be watching us good Christians. I mean, we're good Christians. Don't they know that? As much as I detest draconian measures and summary action without due process, and I do detest them a lot, I'm beginning to think that there are elements in police forces across the country who either don't understand the point of their jobs or are power-mad thrill-seekers, and that such people will not respond to coaching and sensitivity training. While lives are being lost on America's streets at the hands of police, efforts by their leadership to rein them in are apparently failing miserably. It seems that there is no time like the present to break it to these errant police officers that the gloves are coming off, and unjustified violations of well-being of ordinary citizens, the people the police are entrusted to serve and protect, will be investigated and dealt with swiftly and harshly. A police officer should never lose sight of the fact that he or she is a public servant, and if they do, they should not be police officers anymore.
That's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. You do have a flair for the dramatic. Still to come, do Jeep Cherokees dream of electric sheep? And whatever happened to the Harad experiment?
Soot. You've been hearing a lot of not-so-nice things about soot. Mostly from tree-hugging, dirt-worshipping pansy liberals and people who think breathing is important. They will talk the ears off your head, droning on and on about wind and solar and renewable energy. What they don't tell you is that soot built America. Our modern post-industrial society owes everything to soot. If it wasn't for coal-fired power and diesel-powered transportation, America would grind to a halt. That's a fact. And as long as we have anything to say about it, and as long as there's profit to be made in government subsidies on soot, we're going to do everything we can to keep it that way. We're America's soot industry. Profitable, ugly, traditional, American.
And now here's Moose Weintraub with a Sports Half Minute.
Weintraub Sports Half Minute. It's a whole half minute of sports. 30 seconds of sports. Who's Weintraub Sports Half Minute?
This is your Sports Half Minute. I'm Moose Weintraub. England defeats Germany 1-0 in the FIFA Women's World Cup 2015 third place playoff. Gripping, isn't it? Not so much.
Weintraub Sports Half Minute.
Thanks, Moose. Always a great report from Moose. I want my car to be connected to the internet, said some idiot somewhere sometime, and voila! 20 years later, here it is, the internet-connected car. Unfortunately, car companies are apparently no brighter when it comes to the internet security thing than Microsoft was when it released Windows 95. Now, a pair of computer security experts, Charlie Miller and Chris Valsek, have worked up an exploit for the 2013 Jeep Cherokee and its internet-connected Uconnect infotainment system. This exploit allows them to monitor and control the engine, brakes, steering, seat belts, wipers, GPS receiver, transmission, drivetrain power parameters like, wheel speed, vehicle speed, attitude and acceleration, the radio, environmental controls, basically the whole fucking car. The good news is that I don't own a 2013 Jeep Cherokee or any other Uconnect-equipped vehicle. Miller and Valsek say that they have been working with Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, the parent company of the Jeep brand, sharing their research to effect a solution to the security vulnerability, and FCA has issued a patch to the faulty software. The downside is that the patch has to be installed using a USB thumb drive, either by the vehicle owner or by a qualified service technician. Why it is that FCA hasn't figured out a way to do hot fixes over the internet to these internet-connected vehicles boggles the mind. I guess because Windows 95. And since people were either scared or too lazy to patch Windows, it's highly likely that many of the vulnerable vehicles will remain vulnerable. And knowing my luck, I'll be ironically run over by some neo-Luddite hipster whose script kiddie friends thought it would be cool to dick with his steering. Thanks in advance, assholes. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? Melanie Griffith and Antonio Banderas are calling it quits. So, I guess it's about time for her to marry Don Johnson again. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsUndies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, you can submit your story tips online at newsundies.com or on Twitter with the hashtag NUSTip. NewsUndies is a weekly show. We'll be back on Friday, July 31st with fresh undies. If you like this video, please like this video. If you like the show, please spread the word. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, circle us on Google+, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, ignore us on MySpace, tell your friends, and buy NewsUndies Kitsch at newsundies.com. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at NewsUndies, until next time, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be watching RoboCop for the N-billionth time. Thanks to story tippers Jeff, the God of Biscuits, and the ubiquitous Anonymous. And thanks to everyone who shared and commented last week. You know who you are. That's right. I have two different NewsUndies cups on the desk here. I have the new one with the fancy new logo. You know, that one, huh? But this has nothing in it. This one, my 2010 mug, yeah, that's got the coffee in it. And a plastic spoon. Check that out. I just want to tell you good luck. We're all counting on you.